Everybody seems to be calling themselves a targeted individual nowadays, and often these kind of people are labeled crazy. But are they for real? What is this thing, a targeted individual? Simply, it's just a victim of gang stalking and electronic harassment, which doesn't end, and it goes on for a long time, for weeks and months and years. And such a victim is constantly under attack, and their whole life is sabotaged. Their career, their health, everything that sort of his life is completely sabotaged. Targeted individuals are often labeled crazy, delusional. They sort of, when they try and explain what's happening to them, it seems like somebody who needs help, and seems like surely there must be some kind of pill or institution that can sort of take your paranoia away. And unfortunately, the rest of the society is in the dark, because the explanations just don't make sense. It doesn't make sense as to why a group of people would be constantly sort of 24 hours a day going after one individual, sabotaging everything. It just sounds a bit childish. It sounds a bit insane. It sounds a bit crazy that somebody would use electronic harassment on a normal, non-criminal, or just a very defenseless and helpless person. So all of it sounds unbelievable, and it doesn't sort of, it's not rational, but it is real. It's happening. And I think most of the confusion is when the victim tries to explain, and for every explanation there's a bit of a counter argument, or when the victim tries to explain that I'm hearing voices in my head constantly, which is voice to skull. That counter argument to that would be like there's a mental disease, there's a mental illness for that, it's called schizophrenia, so just get help and go to hospital, take your medication. When the victim says, but yeah, it's not just hearing voices, people can read my mind and can anticipate my next move and can, they know what I'm doing. The counter argument would be, such a technology doesn't exist. How is that even possible? That sounds a little bit too voodoo-like. It's completely out of this world. So you have to be nuts. You've got to be crazy. Victim tries to say, but it's not just mind reading. That's why my career, and I've got no money. I'm poor. I'm broke. And the counter argument would be, every person should take responsibility for themselves. If you're good at your job, you wouldn't lose your job. If you're hardworking enough, if you put enough faith and hard work in anything, you can achieve anything you want. So victim goes forward and explain that I've lost all my friends. I've got no relationships. My partner, girlfriend, boyfriend has left me. My family's against me. And counter argument would be, hey, but if you're a positive person, if you're a lively person, if you're in a good mood, if you're just constructive, if you're just a good vibe type of person, then surely you should be able to make lots of friends. So it seems like every explanation that the targeted individual gives, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't kind of make sense. And how many TRs are actually there in the world? There's no official number. I've tried to come up with a guesstimate. I guess there's about over 3 million people that are actually targeted, and they're real. This is the whole world, and this number is growing, which means in 10 years time I'm still guessing there could be over 10 million perpetrators across the whole world. And who can be targeted? It can be anybody. It could also be children, could be pets. And targeting a person, this whole thing of gang stalking and being a targeted individual, it's a crime. So just like anybody can get shot, or anybody can be robbed, or anybody can be sort of mugged, or have an unfortunate crime happen to them. And the typical hardships of what any sort of victim goes through, I mean, biggest one is health. They are under constant pain. Usually there's a fake heart rate, there's a pain to the brain. The brain has actually been systematically destroyed. There's pain in other organs of the body as well. There's just all kinds of pain that you can imagine. So electronic harassment is actually a weapon that's being used against the victim. There's also a mental and psychological kind of warfare. Sort of the victim doesn't have any kind of peace or quiet, and they're also under constant noise. There's a lot of strange events happening to them. There's a lot of bizarre events that keep on happening on a daily basis, and those events are strategically designed to throw them off and drive them to be insane. Another problem is that targeted individuals, typically in most cases, they don't have any kind of privacy. This is how their attacks are so effective. They've got no privacy in their home wherever they go. They've got zero privacy, so the attackers can see exactly what they're doing, everything they're doing. All communications are hacked, phone calls, emails, any kind of communications they have. And it's a case of the world is watching. It's almost like a big brother type of situation. Um, Another, perhaps the biggest one, is social status. Because targeted individuals are portrayed as being crazy, as being insane, you're bound to lose a lot of credibility right from the get-go. The attackers or the gang stalkers actually do make it a point to sort of carry out a defamation of character campaign, where they go out and label, or maybe create lies that the target is a criminal, or is some kind of involved in some kind of illegal dealings, or something along those kind of lines. And just losing friends and having no friends and having no relationships. I mean, just as a result of so much drama and so much negativity, and not having any kind of social status, that's bound to happen, and also being perceived as crazy. There's also what's called street theater, where there are a number of coordinated events by the perpetrators or the attackers. These events are just deliberately designed to sort of throw or sort of get a reaction out of the victim. Something as good as road rage, where there could be a setup to try and incriminate the perpetrator or incriminate the victim. Life is hell for them. Life is hell for targeted individuals. There's nothing going their way. There's nothing pleasant. I mean, there's constant pain. It's unbelievable to think that you can be in pain and there's no medication. There's nothing that can help you. And suicide actually appears to be the only solution. It's a completely hopeless situation. I mean, all your friends, the relationships are turned against you. There's no money, there's no life, there's no joy, there's no, you can't even pray. And yeah, that's what being a different phases of being a targeted individual. Most of us start off as non-victims, and up until the point where we've gathered enough knowledge and have a sort of a fair amount of understanding. So as a non-victim, most people just live their normal life. They go about their daily business with no problems. And unfortunately, I think a lot of them don't understand that this sort of thing exists. This electronic harassment thing does exist. It's important to just be informed, even if it's not happening to you, even if you're still not a victim. Mostly just to try and prevent the massive damage that can happen. It's a system that's designed specifically to sort of take out all your finances, to make you dry and empty and have no money, have no way of supporting yourself. Also, the common trick that they play is they're trying to get the victim to move places, move from apartment to apartment or whatever, change states or provinces. And when you do try and get a lot of help or medical help, it's probably just going to be a misdiagnosis, and you end up spending a lot of money for nothing. Doctors might tell you there's no problem, or they might give you a wrong diagnosis. The whole thing with gang stalking and electronic harassment is that it's very unfair. You only gain experience by going through the thing. So it's only once you get in the hole and you find there's actually no way out that a lot of the things begin to make sense. Also, a lot of the damage is completely irreversible. Once you've lost your job, once you've lost your money and your friends, it becomes nearly impossible to get all of those things back. And also, the perpetrators seem to control the pace. They seem to sort of dictate, they drain, they might sort of cut off all your friends, cut off your entire support system, and isolate you. And then once it's very difficult, they know that you can't get any kind of support, then they only move you on to the next phase. Okay. So the first level is a newbie, a person who's sort of signed up to this gang stalking program and who's a victim. And most people are completely unaware, because perpetrators, again, controlling the pace. They're not going to play all their cards immediately at the same time. Also, what they do is that they do a lot of pre-study beforehand. They study your actions and routines, and they check you out, and you still think life is normal and you're completely unaware of what's going on. And the worst case for a newbie is that you run on for years without knowing what's going on, without knowing that this thing is gang stalking, or maybe even believe misinformation. People who say this doesn't exist, the technology isn't there yet. Move on to the next level. Maybe within months, there's bound to be a lot of strange events happening. Things at work, or maybe you might even start experiencing strange things around the house. There's a lot of madness whenever you're in public, and but you can't just put it. It's very difficult to put a name. It's very there's a lot of weird things, but you don't know what to call it, and you keep on bumbling on. And it's a bit of an ironic situation where it's important for the person at level 2 who's having a lot of these suspicions to get the knowledge quicker. Again, just the case of avoiding cash, avoiding losing as much money as possible. I mean, money is the key here. Once you broke, it's very, very difficult, and to try and hold on to the job as much as possible. The trick that they play is that you've got to move a job, you've got to but your job is your means of making money, and they know very well they're going to make it impossible for you to get the next job. And then you move on to the next level, which is getting the first knowledge after months and months of all of these crazy events. You begin to know the terminology, you begin to know there's such a thing as gang stalking. And at first the information might be very hard to digest because it's for whatever reason. It just doesn't seem believable. It just doesn't seem logical. It doesn't, it's very difficult to work out the motive, for one, as to why people would gang stalk you or people would follow you the entire day. But I mean, after some experience, you would soon find out that those people are actually getting paid. It's all a money-making scheme. It's just another way of making profits. The biggest mistake that a person in level 3 can make is to be in denial or disbelief, and again, to remain in this phase for too long. Also because there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of information that's deliberately made to keep you in the dark and make you, keep you as uninformed as possible. That's the whole game of misinformation. Fortunately, and I think there are a lot of victims now that sort of progress to the next phase. After lots of experiences, I mean, it's very difficult to still lie to the guy and say, look, you're crazy or whatever. Understanding of the full picture, understanding that this is actually a system. Electronic harassment and gang stalking, organized stalking, it's all a system. You understand almost the A to Z. However, some still believe that this can be reversed, that you can almost somehow lead a normal life. There's still a lot of misinformation out there that it's a microchip or it's a nano implant or it's an RFID chip that gets implanted into your body, and then you can go to surgery. You pay lots of money to remove it, but it's probably not the case. And others believe that you can actually lodge a lawsuit or create a case and actually think that they can win. And then move on to the next level, which is level 5. Typically after many years or many months of seeing the routine and suffering and seeing the same kind of pain. And depending on the level of attacks, some normal, good-hearted people, victims, are sort of tempted to become perpetrators. I mean, they usually get offered better deals and say, look, if you join us, you become a perpetrator, we're not going to attack you, or we're not going to, it's going to be easier on you. But life is still very unpleasant. And as a level 5 person, as somebody who's very experienced, the goal should be to make it quicker for the next victim to know what's going on. I mean, right now, my guess is that most victims spend minimum, on average, about 2 to 3 years, losing cash, losing friends, lost, running around in circles and not knowing what it is that's going on. And I mean, the simple trick there is just to sit still and know that all the events are orchestrated, all the events are sort of artificial and made. And then also contributing to making this thing stop. A lot of the victims are actually good working people with lots of skills, people who are very intelligent, people who are, they're not criminals, they're educated. A lot of them are, if you were to give them a job, they could be contributing to society. Imagine if all of us were to come together and move on to the next generation of being a TI, not just sobbing and feeling sorry for ourselves, but strategically coming up with ideas of trying to make this whole thing stop. And I think our goal, anybody's goal in level 5, should be to make this thing stop. System of gang stalking and how it actually works. The intent is just to kill a victim, leave no evidence behind, because otherwise everybody's going to be getting caught, and make it seem like it's the victim's fault, like the person was really just bound to die, but at the same time lie to society and spread a lot of rumors and a lot of negative stuff about the victim. And the goal really is to just make lots of money without leaving any kind of trace behind. It's a slow kill system. Again, ties in with the fact that you don't want to be leaving clues and traces behind, and destroy everything that makes the victim or a normal person to be alive, like a job, relationship, health, and everything else. If you can just bombard a person with negative events throughout the day, 24 hours a day, that person is just bound to die. Gang stalking is actually a very systematic and a clever system. There's a lot of history as to how long it existed and how it's been refined. So it's not something which is new. It's been around for a long time. It destroys the career and finances. No money, It's going to be difficult for anybody without any cash. There's not going to be any, if you get sick, you're not going to be able to afford hospital fees. You're not going to be able to feed yourself. No proper nutrition. All relationships are destroyed. Everything. All relationships from even when the person was young, from high school, from all areas of life, all of them, every single relationship, they go to the person and then spread lies and sabotage that relationship. Personal health is also destroyed, creating diseases such as cancer and destroying vital organs, the heart, the kidney, and just making sure that you actually die. I mean, a person could still be mentally and spiritually strong and manage to survive. So the perpetrators or the guys who are attacking, make sure that even the spiritual activities that are destroyed, prayer, meditation, and everything else. And mentally, you're being driven to be insane. System is actually made out of two parts. One of them is gang stalking, and the other one is electronic harassment. Gang stalking is more of the social side of these kind of attacks. So effectively turn the whole of society against the victim. Make sure that whenever the guy applies for a job, he can't find a job. Make sure that everywhere the person goes, he's got a bad name and nobody actually wants him. Drive the victim to complete isolation. And it's actually very difficult in today's world to live in complete isolation. No friends, no job, nothing, no life. And then there's also constant harassment, where everybody else seems to be in on attacking the victim, neighbors, friends, family. And then when it comes to electronic harassment, it's a case of 24-hour surveillance. The victim, has got no privacy. So anything that he does, the guys who are attacking him already know in advance. There might be bugs placed in the house. There might be hidden videos, or hidden. The cars might actually also be bugged. So everything that the guy does, all the phone calls, everything that the person is doing, the perpetrators know exactly what he's doing and what he's saying and who he's communicating with. Electronic harassment also is about inducing pain. So it's actually also a weapon where the victim is being attacked from a distance. Health and well-being is also going to suffer as a result. So ultimately, the aim is to make money. But if you made money in a simple way, it's going to be a scheme or a pyramid scheme or whatever, and people are going to catch on to it very quickly, and it's probably not going to last long. By using this gang stalking system, it's actually, it can run on for a while without ever getting caught. So first step is to find a victim. It could be anybody. It doesn't actually matter. The perpetrators actually do spend a lot of time planning their attacks, so that sort of there's personalized for the victim. Then it's a case of physical attacks, making sure that the guy doesn't have any kind of privacy and he's, eventually falls sick. Destroy his public image so that wherever the guy turns to, if it's a case of having a job, whatever. So everything that makes the victim to be sort of a human being is destroyed. And while it's doing all of this, make sure that the evidence is hidden. And profit doesn't have to be on death. It could be, as the victim is alive as well. So because the perpetrators or whoever, the network or whoever the guys that are running the systems are going to be making lots of millions, they can afford advanced technology for spying, for sort of attacking as weapons, whatever. And also, this system employs a lot of people, 24 hours a day. So there's a whole army of people just per victim. It's probably about 10 to 20 people, perpetrators per victim. And also, they go around paying normal members of society, maybe neighbors and friends, to sort of bribe them. And like it might also be a family doctor is also bribed in some cases. It's very expensive to run, but the incentive is there. At the end of the day, they're making lots of millions, so they can sort of more or less afford to run this sort of system. And there are just too many pieces to work out. Ultimately it's a crime, but because there's so many pieces to work out, it's actually very difficult to explain to anybody, or even for the victims, it's very difficult for them to work it out. So the full picture actually looks something like this, where the first step is to find a victim. The perpetrators actually don't make it clear to the victim that they're spying on him, so they pretty much spend a couple of months or even years stalking the guy, collecting a lot of information. So they study the guy's routines, they get a list of all his friends and relationships, so they can start turning those friends against the guy. They've done all of this by invading the person's privacy. And then comes a point where they actually start physically attacking the victim by doing a lot of stuff. Eventually it's a case of the victim becoming depressed, or maybe even becoming a little bit insane. Public image is destroyed. There's a lot of lies being spread. It's going to be difficult for the victim to find a job, and Evidence is usually hidden by saying that the victim is a mental retard or has got a serious mental problem, and unfortunately there's no means for the victim to fight back, and profit is sometimes made from insurance fraud. You can sign up somebody for insurance without them knowing. They'll live for a couple of years, that insurance builds up, the premiums build up, and then you kill the person, you go and collect the insurance. Or it could be for testing out the weapons. I mean, there's a lot of technology involved, so another reason could be to just find a lot of unsuspecting victims and actually carry out a lot of tests, or for medical experiments. Ultimately, it is a crime. It boils down to attacking a victim with no chance of him defending himself, and you're doing all of this from a distance, and it's very unethical. There's no morals. There's a lot of everything ugly that you can think of, a lot of lying, a lot of manipulation, a lot of a lot of ugly stuff. It's a violation of human rights. I mean, you just invading somebody's privacy is already a massive violation of human rights. Killing somebody from a distance, signing up somebody for a medical experiment without being accountable for their death, that's already a violation of their rights. And a lot of this works because a lot of lies are being spread around. Just lie to as many people as they need to, but ultimately it's killing. You're killing a human being, but it's very, very, very expensive. It's a weapon, just like any other weapon, just like a gun, just like a knife. Taking a knife is stabbing somebody. It just happens to be a very expensive weapon, and it is a crime. And gang stalking is getting quite popular recently, simply because it's a profitable crime. You can commit this kind of crime and get away with it. It will be mostly for things where you have to kill the victim, where the victim must be sort of dead, such as insurance fraud, taking over somebody else's assets, or simply neutralizing in political opposition for control, or just committing revenge on somebody else. So this is the sort of crime when you want the opposition to die and you don't want to leave any kind of evidence or trace. And one can think of it as like we've seen so many different TV shows of this sort of thing, where the criminal goes out of his way to, he's a very clever criminal. He's not just going to use a gun or stab you or maybe set your house on fire, but he's going to plan every single move in detail, think of everything that could go wrong, and try and counteract. That's whatever it is that can go wrong, he would have counteracted it and planned for it. And then this criminal also makes sure that they blindfold the rest of everybody, rest of the society, and then everybody just thinks, well, it was just one of those things. So the dream scenario for this criminal would be to make lots of money, leave no evidence behind, nothing whatsoever to link him to the crime, shift the blame to the victim. If he can make it look like the person committed suicide, or he was on drugs, or the victim was bound, it was destiny for this victim, was bound to happen like that, and to make it that there's no chance of trial whatsoever. If he's got friends in high places such as police, medical practitioners, just make the files disappear, just make any kind of evidence disappear, and then keep on repeating this crime, go on and on and on without getting caught. And again, fool the entire world, and it all appears to be the victim's fault. So there is such a system that's currently can achieve all of those things, and this system is called gang stalking. It's a reality. I mean, it's happening right now today. It's not only just gang stalking, but most of the victims are also suffering from what's called electronic harassment. There are millions of victims globally right now as we speak today, and typically the motives are to, in some cases they make money out of insurance fraud, running illegal medical experiments. It takes about a good $100 billion to sort of make a vaccine or a drug. So imagine if you can just get a lot of subjects and you don't have to pay them and you're not accountable for their deaths. Intellectual property theft. I mean, imagine you're a big corporate and you can sort of steal ideas from your opposing or competing company without having to pay for them, or without the person working on the project knowing that ideas are being stolen from them. Another motive is just outright to just kill, just neutralize a victim. There are a lot of cover-ups. So there's complete denials. Almost everybody who's not a victim, or everybody who knows exactly how the system works, some of them will actually deny that there's such thing as gang stalking or electronic harassment. Part of the cover-up is just blaming the victims to be insane, and then most of the cover-up is also doing victim blaming, just claiming that the victim is not well, or the victim is a criminal, or creating even false records. And then this whole system actually is a slow kill. It is a system that's out there. It's as dangerous as a gun. It's actually, what is it that targeted individuals can do to bring to an end electronic harassment a lot quicker? This problem has been around for a long time. Will probably continue for years to come unless we try and do something, or try and come up with ways to speed the progress up a little bit quicker. The first thing is about materials, blogs, all the materials to bring awareness, websites, blogs, YouTube videos, and it's all about thinking about the new victim. Just improving it to be around the new victim who doesn't know what's going on. If you look at it from that perspective, I mean, a lot of them go through this sort of mental block that why should I listen to this website? Why should I listen to this video? It's all around presentation, having a bit of high quality materials. It's good that there are a lot of blogs out there, but they just probably maybe around the look and feel and having a sense of authority. A lot of the information doesn't compare with what would look like a mainstream website or blog. So just little things like design and maybe just making it look modern, and also having a variety of materials, PDFs, audiobooks, just whatever it takes to spread the word, but in a very sort of high quality type of way. Then other part is just more unity within the community. I mean, there are a lot of forums already, everybody's sort of coming together already, but mostly around high value professionals, those who've been working, those who've been employed in sort of proper skills. And it's all the skills that have been lost. If you can think of, I mean, everybody can be a targeted individual and they lose a job and they can't contribute anymore. If you think of like all the software developers coming together, and imagine what they could build, what they could come up with, all the sort of web developers coming together, all of a sudden you've got you've got a whole range or a new generation of better looking sites and better looking blogs. Also, every professional tackling the problem from their perspective, from their point of expertise. I'm sure there are targeted individuals that were psychologists and psychiatrists, if they could also bring their expertise and to the table, and just ensuring that all of these skills are used. They're not just lost, and we're not just spreading the word from one angle, like being a TI is bad and it's all terrible. Also, for all the TIs to begin to have a number of shared goals. And I mean, the immediate sort of reaction, knee-jerk reaction would be to sort of spread the word and let everybody know. But what about the other goals? For instance, for reducing the amount of time that a new victim gets to know. I still think it takes them about a couple of years for them to know that they're a full TI or to understand the full system. Just reducing this amount of time should be one of the goals. And another one should be, stats and data. For instance, we don't know how many targeted individuals are there in the world. Nobody knows because this problem is being kept a secret. There's a whole lot of other data that we don't know. We don't know how much the perpetrators are earning. We don't know if they are recruiting young people, or how many, we don't have a lot of that sort of detailed analysis or detailed stats. Again, in terms of having long-term goals, realizing that this will take a while, and if we are a little bit more sort of strategic, a little bit more sort of thinking of trying to tackle the problem in maybe 5 years at a time or 2.5 years at a time, having shared goals or shared milestones, like where does the whole TR community want to be in 5 years time, that sort of thing. So it's all about being aware that the crime is getting out of hand. There's not, my opinion is that there's not going to be anything massively that happens in the next 10 years to 15 years. There's sure the awareness will spread, but there's not going to be everybody's still going to be a victim. I don't think this is going to go away. And if we were to take a long-term view, I think all of us must try and chip away at the problem in a sort of staged or sort of almost in a strategic.
When will electronic harassment come to an end? What year is it going to be? It's probably going to be around 2030 that there's some kind of progress or the first step of movement in the right direction. This is going to be lots of hurdles to overcome before that. I mean, every victim knows that this sort of challenge has been going on for a while, and it's hard. It seems like it's going to run on forever. So that's probably the most realistic answer for now. The biggest hurdle is going to be denial. That for over 50 years, pretty much everybody has denied that electronic harassment exists, that it's a problem, it's there. That's the biggest hurdle to try and overcome for now. Current situation as we have it, it's lots of victims. All of them are being ignored. All of them are sort of being shunned and put to one side. And it's simply because there are not enough people suffering from this sort of thing. The volume of people is not there. I don't know how many victims there are, but I'm guessing it's less than 1% of any country, less than 1% of the entire world's population. So that's why for now it's still very easy to ignore this sort of problem and just put people outside and say, no, it doesn't exist, it's not there. So what is it that it's going to take? The first thing is going to take lots more victims, unfortunately. It's going to have to take a lot more people becoming victims so that you can't just run around saying, it's this problem doesn't exist, there are not enough people. And this is going to mean a lot of people have to die. And still within that, it's very easy to sort of hide behind normal illnesses such as cancer and other types of medical illnesses and falsified medical records. And probably what's more realistic is a significant portion of the workforce, if people don't pitch up to work and they're all suffering from hearing voices or suffering from some kind of illness, then that's a little bit more serious. It just means now there's less goods being produced, less people are paying taxes, and whatever government or whoever's in power is going to have less in their pockets, less GDP, less money in their pocket. And maybe what it's also going to take is awareness by example. If a neighbor sees, and if a neighbor can stalk somebody, one of their neighbors, and they can actually use remote neural monitoring by example, and that actually becomes clear to them that, look, I can see through my neighbor's house, I can see what they're doing, I can see what this guy is doing, I can read his thoughts via text. So that's a clear-cut example. You can't deny that. You can't deny it would have been sort of a clear-cut example of you having seen the technology at work. Current situation, again, it's in terms of rest of society who's not victims. Most people are actually unaware that this sort of thing is going on and it exists. And most people actually do only know about all of this kind of madness once they become victims. Something like voice to skull is very difficult to explain to somebody who's not a victim. And also the scheme is too complex to work out, to understand. There's so many moving parts, there's so many little bits and pieces. It's very difficult to understand why a network or a gang would employ sort of people taking shifts 24 hours just to sort of harass somebody. It doesn't make sense. And also the money-making part of it doesn't really make sense, because most people are used to crimes being somebody walking up to a guy and taking your car by force or breaking into a bank. But this is not a crime like that. It's a lot of these gangs seem to be very patient. They seem to be following a very strict system. It's very unlike a normal gang that we've seen before. And also different sectors of society are involved. Lawyers are being gagged if you try and open up a case. If you try and go to the police, some of the police might actually know exactly what's going on. They might just ignore and say, no, there's no case, there's no problem. Medical practitioners, psychiatrists, psychologists, some of them must know, some of them actually do know what's going on, and they play along and just label people crazy. So the question to ask would be, it's a 50-year-old problem going around the same circles of denial, and it's over 50 years of this sort of thing, and even in today, there doesn't seem to be any hint of progress in the right direction. So it's going to be, what are the key milestones, and when is it that we're going to start seeing a first year where there's a bit of a turnaround? It's going to have to take volume, and it's going to be a case of compound growth. I think anybody can make these kind of calculations, and you just take a sample calculation and say, if you start off with a certain amount of victims and you're growing by whatever percent, you can take a number, 15%. I picked 15% because it's a nice modest number. How long is it going to take to reach 10 times the scale? It's going to be in 15 years time, which is a long time. 15 years is, if you think about where we were technologically 15 years ago, and 5 years is usually lots of technological advances in 5 years. So it's still going to take 15 years until there are 10 times more victims. It's roundabout. It could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, but it's roundabout 15 years. And the other number is 25% of an affected workforce, 25% being, it's going to be difficult to ignore a quarter of people not being able to contribute to a tax pool if you're a government. So this is still going to take 20 years for it to come to start happening, which is a long time. And then to reach 10% of the population that are victims, that 1 out of every 10 of every person is a victim, it's going to take 25 years, which is effectively an entire generation. So these are just the numbers showing how long it's going to take, how long it's actually, you know, because it's still very easy to ignore the problem now. It's going to take quite a long time. Many years of struggle are still to come, but victims of today can only help by speaking out, educating other victims, and doing what they've done before. I mean, a lot of the victims have their information because somebody, somebody told them, or somebody sort of informed them, and they've found that information. And as for non-victims, it's all about keeping an open mind. It is becoming a problem. It is becoming a problem for anyone. I mean, most people don't know how they got attacked. They don't know how they got into the program. They don't know why. It who's the next victim? The next victim is going to be a person who's currently just living a normal life, doesn't know that this madness that exists, and yeah, it's all about just keeping an open mind.